We're talking about Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse this week. Let me write that. And
Yeah.
yeah, very exciting. This is a sequel to 2018 Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. And this film once again follows Miles Morales, Gwen Stacy, and Peter B. Parker as they find themselves interacting with this organization of spider people from across the multiverse, led by Spider-Man 2099, Miguel O'Hara. The film is directed by Joaquim Dos Santos, Kemp Powers, and Justin K. Thompson. Written by Phil Lord, Chris Miller, and Dave Callahan. And stars Shamik Moore, Haley Steinfeld, Jake Johnson, Oscar Isaac, Brian Tyree Henry, Luna Lauren Velez, and Jason Schwartzman, Daniel Kaluuya, Issa Rae, and many, many more people. It's a multiverse film. There are a lot of characters. We're gonna do non-spoilers for a little bit and then spoilers. But Niles, what were your initial spoiler-free thoughts on the film?
I mean, Across the Spider-Verse, amazing.
Yes.
I so much enjoyed this movie. The art style, like far and away, is like the best part of this movie, or the best part of it, for me.
Yeah.
I just love how the way it looks. And I feel like that they visually, when you compare it to the first one, which I don't think we reviewed on this podcast, but we should as a
predates
rewind
our show.
maybe one day.
Yeah,
that would be fun. But
maybe leading up to the next one, we'll do a rewind on it.
That would actually be really good. But yeah, I think visually this is on par or even better than the original one in terms of like the visual aesthetic, and the narrative is, I think, very strong as well. We get some good character development for Gwen Stacy and Miles Morales. We get a good, mix of characters in there, built on the momentum of the first one. Like, I honestly really do not have many bad things to say about this film. Like, I have like one or two complaints, and they're just small little things that only apply to me. It's not like it's like, oh, the movie's wrong, it needs to be fixed. Like, it's no small little nitpicky things for me. But Dylan, what about you? What are your initial thoughts?
I agree. I think this is an absolutely stunning film that builds on both the technical and narrative foundations laid by the first one in really satisfying ways, I would say. And you mentioned the art. I would say the animation work alone is worth the price of admission. Like, even if everything else about the movie was complete dog shit, which it isn't, it's amazing. But even if that it were, that would be worth it. Like, every world they travel to has its own art style, and not a single one of them disappoints. Gwen's universe especially was just like really beautiful to look at, and was watercolor inspired. Haley Steinfeld also mentioned in an interview that the art of Gwen's world is meant to behave like a mood ring, where the world around Gwen will change color based on her emotions in the scene. And it's unreal. Like, this movie is insane.
Yeah, it's really like a masterclass in animation. And yeah, I just love her aesthetic too. Like, when the movie starts, we won't go very far into spoilers yet, but when the movie starts, she's in band practice, and then when she leaves the auditorium, the animation just blends really well in this transition into like just her walking down the street and then walking into a subway. Like, there's no like entrance or egress or anything like that. It's just like, here it is, and it's just blending so seamlessly, so you can kind of feel what she's feeling, like how everything's just kind of blurring together. Like, it's very artistic in the application of how it like moves around the world and just blends these different things together. And I feel like, the use of color, I feel like every kind of world has its own special use of the color.
Like, color and style too.
Yeah, because I agree that with that quote from Haley Steinfeld, that it does feel like a mood ring in her universe. But I feel like you can see some of those elements in those other universes, like in Miles's world. At least from the first one, I remember very clearly, like, when he's having like this, it's not in this movie, it's when it's in the first one, where he's meeting the original Spider-Man. His color in the background shifts from, like, I think it's like purple and green, like the colors of the Prowler, to the colors of Spider-Man when they're having this interaction. And it's like, oh, so that's how they're using it in his world. So like, I think the use of color across the board is excellent.
Yes, it's really, and the Mountbatten Moonbatten sequence was a really
Oh
great
yes.
standout as well. We might talk about that sequence more in spoilers. It's a very big plot heavy section of the film, but everything it's crazy because there's so many different art styles in the movie and they're on screen together at the same time pretty
Yeah.
often, but it doesn't feel jarring at any point in time, you know? It all kind
Hmm.
of works in this massive collage of a film that they've put together. And in addition to that, the soundtrack extraordinary. Like that opening scene with Gwen in band practice and the music that's playing there too. I knew within maybe 40 seconds of starting this movie, I'm sitting back like, oh, this is something special. The first one was as well, but this is on another level technically. Like they have made something truly incredible that pushes the art form of animation and just film more broadly forward in like crazy ways.
Oh
Daniel
yeah.
Pemberton was the composer, really outdid himself here. And that opening track of when Gwen suits up and goes out to do what she's got to do at the beginning, like that has been
Yeah.
stuck playing in my head since I saw the movie 2 weeks ago.
Wow, resonated with you really
Mhm.
strong there. Well, yeah, I think after I watched this movie, I remember leaving the theater and just thinking that just it feels like so much love and passion went into
Mhm.
this movie because it feels like this movie took like 5 years to like put together, and it didn't. It took like a few years, if that. Like, you know, it was
Yeah.
very like the production timeline was a
Well, it
lot
was five
quicker.
years, but they probably weren't working out the whole time because
Oh,
COVID.
sure, but I think that they were also probably working a little bit on the sequel too, just because I
Oh
think
yeah,
that
that's
there's
true.
like that there's probably like about a year gap between this one and the next one. I think.
Yeah, we can talk about that a little bit, but it's because Haley Steinfeld was asked if she'd started recording dialogue for it yet, and she
Mm,
said no. Um, and either the question was poorly phrased, or she didn't understand it, or that movie's not coming out next year.
yeah, maybe not.
Because if she
But I
hasn't
mean,
started recording voice for that, that's not happening in nine
yeah,
months or
that's
something.
gonna take some time. But yeah, I mean, just the amount of like detail that went into this, like even those intro logos of just like the production companies, like it's
Mm-hmm.
got the visual aesthetic to it applied. Like it's like, oh, you put a lot of work into all these little frames that are going on here, and you thought through the music, you thought through the jokes, you thought through the writing. Like everything feels like they spent hours and hours and hours thinking about it, perfecting it, and it
Yeah.
really does come across that way. So
Mm-hmm. And just everyone in the voice cast is once again crushing it here. They were great in the first movie. We get a lot of new additions in this one. I think everybody is great. I think the Spot is really interesting, both in terms of his origin and in terms of his goals. We'll talk about that more in spoilers. And just lots of fun spider people. It is a Spider Verse multiverse movie, so you get a lot of variations on the character, and I thought they were all pretty funny and done in a way that's not drawing focus away from what matters. It's all just
yes.
flair and fun. It's not um drawing the focus away from the main characters and their drama, that we're always centered where we need to be.
I would agree, yes. And I think they did really good job on the jokes and the
Hmm.
narrative. Like I think the humor all the way through was really funny. I was definitely laughing pretty obnoxiously at some things and some small little Easter eggs that are thrown on screen. You know, it's
Uh-huh.
like some of those spider people when they get into the main place. It's like, oh my gosh, I need to look at that one. Look at that one.
Yeah.
Like it just kind of bounces around, but like
Hmm.
it doesn't. Yeah, like you were saying, it doesn't take you out of the narrative too much or the emotional core of the movie. I think it complements what's going on screen.
Hmm. Yeah, and Spider Punk, we'll talk about more in spoilers, but definitely
Yeah.
a standout character. And just because a lot of people don't didn't seem to know this, and a lot of audience members are kind of getting pissed off in the theater. You should know before going. This is part one of two. This is a
Mm.
two-part story, and I it has a cliffhanger ending. That's like a tiny bit of a spoiler, but not really. But you should know so you don't get upset. I'm of the opinion that the movie feels complete regardless of that. But I cannot explain more about what I mean in the non-spoiler section. So
Yeah. I didn't expect a cliffhanger ending. I didn't realize it was going to be split up into two. So by the end of the movie, I was starting to be like, okay, how are they going to wrap this up? Like,
Yeah.
the clock's ticking here.
Did you feel like you needed more though, or were you kind of satisfied with what you got? What do you
No, I
think of
was
both?
very satisfied with what we got. Like,
Okay.
especially because like without getting too far into spoilers, but the emotional buildup of the reveal at the end, I think it just really works well
Uh-huh.
as a great cliffhanger to the story, because I do want to see what happens next, and I still feel all the emotional tension and the tension of the plot
Mm-hmm.
and everything that's coming up. Like, it worked for me, I would
Yeah.
say, but I
And
can understand how some people might have not liked it as much.
yes. And I don't personally feel this way, but I have seen some people say it, and I can understand how people would think this, that some of the scenes early on uh, go on a little bit long and they could be cut or trimmed down a bit for
Mm,
time because we spend a lot of time on like personal family stuff. I think all of that is going to be. I think it's incredibly important for this movie, but I think it's going to be even more important in part 3. And again, can't say why here, but it's. I do not think a single minute of this movie was wasted or
hmm
lingered too long. And we'll see. But I think to sum up my thoughts on this film, I consider myself a decently creative person overall, but there are choices being made here that I would not even think to think about. Like it's so
hmm
creatively beyond anything that my tiny brain could muster that it's just it's something you watch and you're like, how did someone make this?
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, just like you said, they peppered in so many little Easter eggs,
Hmm.
so many references to Spider-Man, and I think that in and of itself is amazing. But yeah, then you add on the art style, you add on the soundtrack, you add on the narrative, and you take into consideration what happened in the first one and
Yeah.
how that one relates to this movie. Like, it's phenomenal.
Hmm.
And I think, yeah, when I think back to seeing Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire for the first time in theaters, I don't think my little child's brain would have comprehended where we would be today with this kind of masterpiece.
Yeah. And it's too, it's like this is the sequel to what a lot of people consider one of the best films in the genre. Into the
hmm
Spider-Verse, I think came out of nowhere for a lot of people, myself included, and is one of the best Spider-Man films. And somehow this lives up to the expectation of that, and in a lot of ways even exceeds it. But I kind of want to get into details. Do you want to jump in and do
Let's
spoilers?
do it. Let's get into
Oh,
spoilers.